Today, we're uncovering the heartbreaking story of Yokozuna, the wrestling legend whose massive size ultimately led to his tragic downfall. Let's dive in and find out what really happened to him. He was born on October 2nd, 1966, in San Francisco, California, right into wrestling royalty. From the moment Rodney entered the world, wrestling was already in his blood. He wasn't just some kid chasing a dream. He was part of the famous Anoa'i family, the Samoan dynasty that's ruled the wrestling world for more than 50 years. This was the same family that gave the world the Wild Samoans, Ricochet, and later modern stars like Roman Reigns, The Rock, and the Usos. For Rodney, wrestling wasn't just a career, it was a family tradition. His uncles, Afa and Sika, better known as the Wild Samoans, were legends who paved the way long before him. They had dominated tag team wrestling, collecting over 20 championship titles across different promotions. And when it came time for Rodney to follow in their footsteps, they were the ones who trained him. Before making it to the bright lights of the World Wrestling Federation, Rodney spent years paying his dues around the world. He wrestled under names like the Great Kokona and Kokona Maximus, building his reputation one match at a time. From Japan to Mexico, he battled tough opponents, learning different styles and earning real respect in each ring he stepped into. Those years weren't glamorous, but they were important. Every match taught him something new: how to work a crowd, how to adapt to different wrestling cultures, and how to make his presence felt. By the time he was done traveling, Rodney wasn't just another big guy in the ring. He had turned himself into a seasoned performer, ready for the world stage and the next big step in his career. Rodney's first big break in the U.S. came when he joined the American Wrestling Association, performing under the name Kokina Maximus. There, he was introduced as a powerful Samoan superstar, managed by Sheikh Adnan El-Kasi. The character was built to be unstoppable, and it didn't take long for fans to see just how dominant he could be. In one of his most memorable storylines, Kokina was said to have broken Greg Gagney's leg and ended his career, a moment that made him look like a truly dangerous and intimidating force in the ring. By 1992, all that hard work finally paid off. Vince McMahon had noticed him and decided to bring him to the World Wrestling Federation. Rodney first appeared under the name Kokina in an untelevised match that September, but the WWF had much bigger plans in mind. They wanted something larger than life, something that would instantly grab the audience's attention. That's when the transformation happened. On the October 31st, 1992, episode of Superstars, Rodney Agatupu Inoue was reintroduced to the world as Yokozuna, a towering sumo wrestler supposedly representing Japan. The name Yokozuna actually refers to the highest possible rank in sumo wrestling, so from day one, his character was presented as a symbol of absolute dominance. To make the act even more believable, he was paired with veteran manager Mr. Fuji, who waved the Japanese flag at ringside and spoke for Yokozuna during interviews. Looking back, it's clear that the character was built around cultural stereotypes, something wrestling often leaned on in the early 90s. Still, none of it would have worked if Rodney hadn't fully thrown himself into the role. His performance sold the illusion completely. With his incredible size, agility, and natural presence, he made fans believe they were watching a real sumo champion destroy anyone in his path. The result was one of the most convincing and successful gimmicks of that entire era. When Yokozuna first arrived in the WWF, the company wasted no time showing the world just how dominant he was meant to be. From the very start, he wasn't treated like a newcomer working his way up. He was pushed straight into the main event scene. Everything about him was designed to make an impact: his size, his presence, and most of all, his finishing move. That move was the bonsai drop, a thunderous sit-down splash from the second rope that left audiences stunned and opponents crushed. It wasn't just a finisher, it was a statement. Every time Yokozuna climbed the ropes, fans knew what was coming, and the sight alone was enough to make the crowd gasp. It made him look untouchable, like no one could stand a chance once he decided to end the match. That single move helped turn Yokozuna into one of the most feared and talked about stars in wrestling almost overnight. The brilliance of Yokozuna's bonsai drop wasn't just in how terrifying it looked, it was in how safely he performed it. The move seemed brutal to the crowd, but behind the scenes, it was all controlled precision. Bret Hitman Hart, who faced Yokozuna many times, once talked about how convincing and yet safe it truly was. He said that when Yokozuna came crashing down, my head would disappear under his thigh, and the crowd would gasp out of fear. But despite all that, he never ever hurt me with it. That quote says everything about who Yokozuna was as a performer. He wasn't just a big man relying on size. He was a skilled technician who knew exactly how to use his weight without ever putting his opponents in danger. That balance between fear and safety, power and control, is what made him so believable. His dominance didn't just look real, it felt real. Then came 1993, the year that truly defined Yokozuna's career. Only a few months after his WWF debut, he was already one of the company's biggest stars. In January, he proved his worth by winning the Royal Rumble, last eliminating the legendary Macho Man, Randy Savage. That victory didn't just give him a trophy, it earned him a main event match for the WWF Championship at WrestleMania 9. And at WrestleMania, Yokozuna did exactly what he promised. He beat Bret Hitman Hart and captured his first WWF World Heavyweight title. It was an incredible rise to the top, faster than almost anyone before him. But what should have been his crowning moment was suddenly cut short. Right after the match, Hulk Hogan came out, challenged him on the spot, and shockingly pinned him for the title. In just minutes, Yokozuna went from champion to former champion. Still, that moment wasn't a failure. It was storytelling. Yokozuna's win and loss were used to give Hogan one last big triumph before stepping away. And when Yokozuna got his revenge a few months later at the King of the Ring in June 1993, beating Hogan clean to reclaim the championship, it cemented his status as the company's top villain, the unstoppable monster the fans loved to hate. To build on that momentum, the WWF created a storyline meant to represent America versus the foreign threat. Yokozuna was cast as the powerful, unbeatable champion, and the company needed a new American hero to stand against him. That's where Lex Luger came in. Their rivalry started in the most dramatic way possible, on July 4th, aboard the deck of the USS Intrepid. The event was called the Yokozuna Body Slam Challenge. One by one, athletes and wrestlers tried to lift him, but no one could budge the massive champion. Then out of nowhere, Lex Luger arrived in a helicopter, stepped onto the deck, and did what everyone thought was impossible. He body slammed Yokozuna. The crowd went wild, and just like that, the stage was set for SummerSlam 1993. At SummerSlam, Luger managed to defeat Yokozuna, but it came by countout. Thanks to a clause in Yokozuna's contract, something his manager Jim Cornette had cleverly negotiated, the title could only change hands by pinfall or submission. That meant even though Luger technically won, Yokozuna still walked out with the championship. Showing just how versatile he was, Yokozuna shifted from singles competition to the tag team division. In 1995, he teamed up with Owen Hart, a surprising but powerful mix of size and speed. The partnership clicked instantly. At WrestleMania 11, the two proved their chemistry by defeating the Smoking Guns to win the WWF Tag Team Championship, marking another major highlight in Yokozuna's career. Their success as a team carried on for months, with Yokozuna and Owen Hart holding the tag titles for an impressive 175 days. Even after losing the belts, they managed to get them back the very next day thanks to their lawyer, Clarence Mason, who argued a technicality in their favor. It was classic mid-1990s WWF storytelling. Dramatic, clever, and full of twists. Their second reign didn't last long, though, as the Smoking Guns soon reclaimed the titles. Still, the partnership proved that Yokozuna could stay relevant in big storylines, even as his singles career started to slow down. But beyond the ring, there was another side to Yokozuna, the man behind the monster. Rodney Inoue was nothing like his fearsome on-screen character. Those who knew him described him as gentle, kind, and full of life. The Rock once called him a sweetheart of a guy, while Bret Hart remembered him as a kind, loving man who never had a bad thing to say about anyone. Behind the scenes, Rodney was always smiling, joking, and lifting people's spirits. It's heartbreaking to realize that the same man who terrified audiences was actually one of the warmest people in the locker room. His struggle wasn't about ego or fame. It was about his body giving out under the pressure of keeping up such massive size for his role. The pressure to stay the biggest superstar in wrestling eventually became too much for Rodney Inoue to handle. What once made him special in the ring slowly turned into his biggest struggle, as the size that built his fame also began to take a serious toll on his health and life. At first, Yokozuna's massive size made him stand out. It was part of what made him a spectacle, but over time, keeping that size under control became his biggest struggle. The constant effort to maintain his weight took a serious toll on his body, and his health began to decline fast. His weight eventually reached around 760 pounds, which caused major concern within the WWF. Even Vince McMahon personally urged him to lose weight, warning that his career and safety were at risk. The company tried to help. Jim Ross later recalled how WWF sent both Yokozuna and Vader to the Duke Weight Loss Clinic, hoping they'd finally get things under control. But even that didn't work out as planned. After just 1 week, the clinic reported that both men had gained weight. They'd been sneaking out at night to buy fried chicken. The story might sound humorous, but it showed just how serious and deep-rooted Yokozuna's struggle really was. It wasn't just a discipline issue. It was a personal, ongoing battle with food and health that no simple plan could fix. Despite trying to turn things around, including taking time off to diet and exercise, even losing over 100 pounds at one point, he still couldn't meet the medical standards needed to wrestle safely. Athletic commissions, especially in New York, refused to clear him to perform, making it impossible for the WWF to keep him on their roster. In May 1998, the company made the painful decision to release him, not out of anger or business politics, but because his health had reached a point where wrestling was no longer safe. Even after leaving WWF, Rodney didn't give up on wrestling. It was in his blood, and he continued working smaller shows and tours overseas, trying to provide for his family. But his body was clearly breaking down. By October 2000, he was touring the United Kingdom with All Star Wrestling, still performing despite being in visibly poor shape. His final match took place in Liverpool, England, a quiet end to a career that had once reached the absolute top. The end of Rodney Agatupu Inoue's life came suddenly and tragically. On October 23, 2000, while staying at the Moat House Hotel on Paradise Street in Liverpool, England, he passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was only 34 years old, far too young for a life like his to end. His body was found by his crew's transport manager, and the reality of his size was heartbreakingly clear when it took 6 men to move him from the hotel room. At first, the news reported that he died of a heart attack, which seemed believable given his enormous size and years of physical strain. But later, doctors revealed the real cause: pulmonary edema. It's a condition where fluid builds up in the lungs, usually because the heart can no longer pump blood properly. In Rodney's case, it was the result of years of stress on his heart and lungs from carrying so much weight. It wasn't a sudden accident. It was his body finally giving out after years of pushing past its limits for the sake of his career. His death showed the painful cost of the physical expectations that came with being the biggest in the wrestling world. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys next time.